Exposed. 10 sinister outdoor tales of haunted encounters, unexplained terrors in the wild. Sarah felt the weight of the night settle over Maplewood, a town shrouded in whispers of darkness and secrets. Just weeks into their new life, every rustling leaf sent shivers down her spine. Shadows seemed to dance in the corners of her vision, particularly around their quaint little home. A chill slithered down her back as she recalled her late husband's absence, a gap in her heart now ghosted by memories. With her 2 children, Ellie and Max, she fought to create a sense of normalcy. Yet, every smile Ellie bared was a veil over nightmares, and Max walked with eyes that flickered like candle flames, curious yet haunted. Together, they ventured out, but even the toothless grins of neighbors and laughter from children seemed stretched and surreal. One evening, her need to connect drove her to join a group trekking the nearby trails, eager to escape their grief. As they gathered around a campfire, the air grew thick with tales of dread that clawed at her heart. Tales of Mr. Granger, the principal who vanished without a trace and left bare whispers in the wind. A man now forgotten but deeply feared. The leaves rustled like a chorus of hushed terrors as eerie stories of lost souls pierced the stillness. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the campfire flickered, the tales darkened further. A hush swept over the gathering when they mentioned Granger's ignominy, the rumors swirling about the school's halls, tinged with disgrace. Sarah's hands trembled. The wayward glances she received spoke of suffocating dread. They trekked deeper into the woods, where shadows pulled together like a dark canvas, as if swallowing the light whole. All night, an oppressive silence loomed. Then, Ellie whispered her own dark revelation, nightmares that turned to reality, shadows chasing her until she woke crying. Max, too, seemed unsettled, his timid voice insistent that he heard calls from the deep woods, names only he knew. Sarah's heart raced with panic. Glancing over her shoulder, the trees seemed to sigh around them, ominous and conspiratorial. In horror, she realized the woods felt alive, shifting and watching like a hungry predator. Just as they turned to leave, a figure slipped between the trees, a blur of familiar sorrow that turned her stomach. This wasn't just a haunted town. It was a living nightmare. Where was safety? Was she foolish to think that moving here would grant her family shelter from what loomed in the dark? A sudden chill tickled her spine just as Ellie cried out, and as the darkness thickened, a frigid whisper orchestrated her fear. Mommy. Fear wrapped its icy fingers around her heart. As she turned, the flickering flame of the campfire battled the shadows, illuminating fleeting shapes that whispered in tones that scratched at her resolve. Panic clawed at her chest as she tried to lead her children out, but the forest bulged with hostile secrets, as if it were bent on trapping them in its tangled maw. Suddenly, a scream. Was it Ellie? Max's hand slipped from hers, and chaos erupted around her. The shadows closed in like a sinister embrace. What if the darkness didn't just hide danger, but was made of it? Racing heartbeats echoed the truth she couldn't escape. Her instincts screamed for her to run, to protect her children from the sinister truths lingering in the distance. And just as Sarah turned to snatch Max back into her grasp, a palpable dread hung heavy in the night air, a shocking revelation waiting to unfold. What awaited them in that darkness? And who else might be lost, woven into the very fabric of Maplewood? Would she and her children be ensnared by the malevolence looming just beyond sight? Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she scanned the encroaching darkness. The flickering firelight struggled against the dense veil of night, casting ghostly figures that contorted into shapes too horrific to comprehend. The scream Ellie's echoed in her mind, a fragile strand snapping in the swell of chaos around them. Ellie! Max! She cried, her voice trembling as she twisted to search for her children. The darkness swallowed her words, muffling all sound as if the forest itself was intent on silencing her. "Mommy!" Ellie's voice broke through the murk, a fragile beacon. It came from deep in the trees too far. Panic surged, making her pulse roar in her ears like thunder. "Stay close." She stumbled forward, the branches clawing at her skin, whispering secrets that made her skin crawl. Max was somewhere behind her, lost amidst the tumult. Every rustle sent her heart into a frantic sprint. The shadows warped with malicious glee, intertwining, twisting, taunting her. "Max!" she yelled again, desperate. The shadows seemed to respond, a deep rumble emanating from the earth, vibrating through her bones like the growl of a slumbering beast. She felt it pooling beneath her feet, a living mass echoing with the cries of the lost, the whispers of Mr. Granger, and those who had vanished alongside him. Suddenly, a chilling presence brushed against her neck, like a breath from the grave. She whipped around, eyes wide, but all she saw were the trees standing sentinel, their branches reaching out like accusatory fingers. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were watching her, gathering in judgment. "Mommy!" Ellie's voice came again, this time closer, but laced with hysteria. Fueled by fear, Sarah ran toward the sound, weaving through the brambles of the underbrush until she broke through the thicket and found Ellie standing in a small clearing. The girl was pale, her wide eyes reflecting the firelight hauntingly. "Mommy, I saw it. Something in the trees." Ellie pointed, trembling with fear. "What do you mean? What did you see?" But before Ellie could respond, a sudden silence fell across the woods. The wind died, leaving an unsettling stillness that encased them. An unseen entity seemed to fill the void with an omnipresent dread, each heartbeat echoing painfully loud. From behind Ellie, something shifted, a heavy rustle that felt like the breath of a predator. Sarah turned, heart hammering, just in time to see a dark shape emerge from the treeline, its form obscured by shadow. It moved with a grace that sent chills traveling down her spine, something unfathomable lurking just at the edge of her vision. An overwhelming sense of danger forced her forward. "Ellie, stay behind me." But just as she reached for her child, Max appeared beside her, wide-eyed and trembling. "Mommy, it wanted me what?" Panic clutched her throat as she looked to Max. "What do you mean?" It whispered my name. It took a moment for the words to sink in, dread pooling in her stomach. Before she could process it, the shadow lunged, a terrifying sprint straight towards them. A guttural sound reverberated through the air, a mix between a growl and a long-suppressed screech that sliced through everything. "What do we do?" Ellie screamed, clutching at Sarah's leg. "Run!" Sarah shouted, grasping Max's hand as she pulled Ellie, sprinting deeper into the woods, away from whatever was creeping up on them. Twisted branches snagged at their clothes, pulling and tearing as the darkness closed in like an all-consuming maw. But there was nowhere to go. The forest loomed like a trap, and behind them, the deep growl flourished, promising the hell of Maplewood awaited. Suddenly, a deafening roar erupted, and the forest erupted in chaos as the dark figure surged forward, shadows dancing wildly, as a storm of fear swept through their hearts. Then a fleeting thought pierced Sarah's mind. What was that shadow? Was there a way to escape? And what would it claim next? Just as a flicker of hope sparked, a figure appeared ahead, silhouetted against the night, a familiar outline that sent shards of ice racing through her veins. Who could it be? More questions loomed in the darkness, more shadows ready to consume. What awaited them in the depths of that cursed wood? Was there any hope left? "Run faster," Sarah urged, pulling Ellie and Max along as dread seeped like poison through her veins. The shadow behind them was relentless, a tangible menace weaving through the trees, hunting them. With each frantic step, it felt closer, the darkness thickening, wrapping around them like a fog. "Mommy, I can't," Max gasped, his small legs struggling to keep up. Panic flared hotter in her chest as she felt his hand slip from her grip. "Max!" She turned frantically, the world around her narrowing to a pinpoint of terror. Her breath quickened, and every instinct screamed for her to turn back, to save her son. In that moment, she felt the ground beneath her start to shake, a low growl reverberating through the treetops, making the leaves quiver as if whispering warnings. "Ellie, stay with me," she cried, fighting against the rising tide of despair. Desperately, she scanned the forest, shadows stretching ominously between the trees and beckoning her into the abyss. "Max!" A howl burst forth, the sound slicing through the air like a blade. It echoed eerily, mingling with the terror that gripped her heart. No longer could she discern if the growl belonged to a creature of this world or a specter of her imagination. Then, a flicker caught her eye, a brief flash of movement behind a nearby tree. Hope flared for a moment, distorting into agony as her legs propelled her toward it. "Max!" she called, forcing the name through her dry lips, pleading for an answer. But as she reached the spot, the silhouette turned into more shadows, swirling with an ill-timed mockery of human form. It was not him. "No," Sarah gasped, heart-wrenching. She staggered back, cringing at the dead eyes that seemed to stare right through her. "Mommy!" Ellie cried out, pulling at her sleeve. "Over there." Sarah turned to follow Ellie's pointing finger, her heart racing anew. The girl had spotted their home, a dim light flickering from the cabin. It seemed so far, a tantalizing beacon amidst the insatiable dark of the woods. But was it safe? Had the darkness tainted their refuge too? "Run!" Sarah shouted again, shifting her grip on Ellie's hand, fear battering against her resolve. They sprinted towards the cabin, the screaming silence of the woods amplifying each footfall. A sudden rustle brought her to halt. "Not now," she hissed, as behind them everything erupted into chaos. The beast thrummed with rage, a dark wave crashing against the shore of their sanity. "Mommy, it's coming," Max whimpered, his voice vibrating with pure terror. "Keep going," she yelled, forcing herself to look back. What emerged from the darkness sent a chill racing through her insides, a formless silhouette that blurred the very lines of nightmares, teeth gleaming like malevolent stars. As the cabin drew closer, trepidations clung to her like cobwebs. "Open the door," Ellie cried, standing frozen at the threshold, fear paralyzing her instincts. "Ellie, open it," Sarah shouted, panic surging through her veins. But the door refused to budge against the force of the suffocating dread rising at their heels. That in a heart-pounding moment, it leapt into view, a grotesque fusion of limbs and shadows, its form shifting and twisting unnaturally. "Mommy, it sees us," Max screamed, yanking at the door. "Ellie, now! Now!" As she threw her weight against the door, it flung open with an abrupt creak. Before her children could rush inside, she felt the icy touch of air brush past her, whispering, mocking, "You can't escape." With one last surge of strength, they tumbled into the cabin, its dim glow wrapping around them like a half-remembered dream. But before Sarah could take a breath of relief, the shadows twisted behind them, a dark tide waiting just beyond the threshold. She slammed the door shut, heart pounding in her chest. But the sense of safety was only fleeting. The growling echoed outside, sneering, as if it were savoring its prey from a distance. "What do we do now?" Max whispered, eyes wide, filled with a terror that hung in the air like shattered glass. Sarah glanced around the room. She caught sight of something lurking in the corner, an old family photo, its edges yellowed and frayed. The faces in it were twisted, shadows flickering over their smiles like a dark omen. "Who are they?" Ellie asked, her tiny voice trembling. And just like that, what was once a home became a coiling pit of dread. Who had lived here before them? And what unholy connection between this cabin and the darkness that hunted them awaited unearthing? Her heart raced. The night was far from over, and the shadows had their secrets. Would they survive long enough to uncover them? The smell of damp wood mixed with an unsettling hint of decay hung heavy in the air, wrapping around them as Sarah tried to steady her breath. She could feel the tremors in her hands, a visceral reminder of the nightmare outside. The shadows pressed against the walls, shapes bending and shifting, whispering feral promises of despair. Mommy Max clutched her leg, his small fingers like iron clamps. "What's happening?" His voice cracked, desperation lacing each word. "I don't know, sweetie," she whispered, glancing towards the door, every creak of the cabin amplifying the dread that coiled like a serpent in her stomach. Ellie stood still, too stunned by the horror to fully grasp the situation. The flickering light from a single bulb overhead illustrated silhouettes that morphed with each heartbeat, transforming every mundane corner into sinister forms. "We have to find a way to secure this place," Sarah stated, pressing down a wave of panic that threatened to break free. She wasn't just their mother. She needed to be their protector. "Where do we start?" Ellie asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Anywhere." They moved quietly through the cabin, searching for anything useful. The dusty air felt oppressive. Shadows danced around them, a constant reminder of the threat just outside. The only sounds were their muted footsteps and the relentless growling echoing from beyond the walls that in the kitchen. A rusty knife lay abandoned on the counter. Sarah snatched it up, the cold steel a meager comfort against the uncertainty that pressed in on her. "This might help us," she said, more to soothe her own nerves than to convince her children. "What if it gets in?" Max whimpered, eyes wide and filling with tears. Sarah crouched down next to him, trying to infuse her voice with strength. "It won't get in. We're stronger together." But the words felt hollow even to her. The growl outside rose to a new level, raw and primal, as if tasting their fear. It sent a shiver racing down her spine. They moved back to the main room where the photo still hung crookedly, whispering secrets of its own. The warped faces stared ahead, grins frozen in time. "Who were they?" Ellie repeated, stepping closer, drawn by curiosity but also repulsion. "I don't know," but a chill seized Sarah as a thought struck her. "They could be the key." "What do you mean?" said Ellie, confusion mixing with fear. "What if a loud crash broke her off?" A metallic clang that resonated from the front door. It rattled ferociously, as though something on the other side was demanding entrance. "Mommy!" Max screamed, scrambling behind her, eyes wide with terror. "Shoo!" she hissed, pressing a finger to her lips. Silence swallowed them, thick like fog. The growling had stopped, replaced by an unsettling quiet. Then, another crash, and the door buckled inwards slightly, splinters flying. The children jumped, hearts racing. "Get away from the door," Sarah commanded, her heart hammering in her chest. This was a fight for their survival, and she would not let panic take hold again. Suddenly, the door lurched open, swinging violently on its hinges. The light from the outside barely penetrated the shadows before being engulfed by a darkness so deep it felt alive. A figure stepped into the entrance, distorted yet human-like, a twitching mass of limbs and shadows melding into one. Sarah's breath hitched as fear climbed higher. "What do you want?" she shouted, her voice trembling. The figure paused, its head tilting in unnatural angles, as if considering her question. Then it spoke, a voice rasping, like dry leaves skittering over pavement. "You should leave before it claims you." The children cowered behind Sarah, their presence anchoring her shaky resolve. "No, we're not going anywhere." "Are you sure?" it hissed, the air thickening with a chill that gnawed at her insides. "The night is hungry and you're too late." The shadows swirled around it, dark tendrils reaching for her. As Sarah held her breath, undecided whether to run or confront this thing. "Mommy, please," Max cried out, terror lacing his voice as the shape crept closer. Her instincts screamed at her to protect them. But what if the truth was worse than the monster? "What is it?" Sarah demanded, fury igniting her fear. The figure drew back, a cruel smirk curling its lips. "Find the truth or you'll be lost forever." With that, it melted back into the darkness, leaving the cabin in an even more profound silence. The flickering light dimmed, shadows consuming the room once more. Sarah turned and looked at her children, determination igniting within her. They needed answers, and they needed them now. "How do we find the truth?" Ellie asked, trembling. Sarah met her gaze, and deep inside, a flicker of understanding ignited. "Let us look at that photo again." But as they turned back, each face in the picture seemed to warp and twist, whispering a ghastly truth she couldn't yet comprehend. What had they stumbled into? And as whispers filled the air, Sarah realized the hunt was just beginning. What secrets did this cabin hold? And would they uncover them before it was too late? As they leaned closer to the photo, the air thickened with an oppressive weight, as if the past was recoiling from their presence. The figures in the picture pulsated, shadows ebbing like ink bleeding into water. Sarah's heart raced. She fought the urge to pull away, to hide, but curiosity anchored her to the spot. "Mommy," whispered Max, his voice hoarse, trembling with childlike fright. "They look angry." Sarah squinted at the faces twisted in eternal malice. "They might be trying to tell us something," she replied, although uncertainty gripped her mind. Just then, a muffled pulse of sound echoed from beneath the floorboards. It was low, rhythmic, like a heartbeat thrumming through the very foundation of the cabin. They exchanged nervous glances. "What was that?" Ellie whispered, her eyes darting around the room. "Stay close," Sarah instructed, gripping the knife tightly. The metal felt reassuring, although it offered little comfort against the approaching dread. The low thump persisted, growing louder, synchronized with the pounding of their own hearts. It radiated from the corner of the room, an old trapdoor barely visible through the layers of dust and grime. Sarah felt a pull toward it, as if something inside beckoned her to bend the rules of reality. "Should we check it?" she asked, her hands trembling not just from anxiety but from an inexplicable urge. "What if it's bad?" Max squeaked, clutching Ellie's sleeve. "We'll never know unless we try," Sarah whispered, although doubt gnawed at her insides with careful precision. She stepped towards the door. Each creak beneath her feet felt like an invitation to disaster. She raised the knife in her other hand, ready for whatever lay beyond. As she reached for the handle, the thumping stopped abruptly, replaced by a dead silence. It hung heavy, pregnant with anticipation, making her blood run cold. Sarah took a breath and pulled it open. The door creaked, revealing a dark abyss beneath the cabin. As shadows swirled like living smoke, a rancid odor wafted up, a combination of mildew and something more sinister, something ancient. "What is down there, Mommy?" Ellie asked, already knowing she would regret asking. "I don't know," she breathed, glancing back at her children. "But we need to be brave. Together." As they lowered their collective gaze, an orange glow suddenly flickered in the depths, catching them off guard. It seemed like fire, but there was no warmth, just an ominous flicker that danced further away, deep within the shadows. "Can you see it?" Max whispered, his voice wavering. "Yes," Sarah replied, the answer feeling like a conscious betrayal. The glow pulsed, drawing her in even as her instincts screamed to run. What secrets lay there? What truths waited for them in the dark? With a surge of determination, she descended the steps, the knife gripped tightly, Ellie and Max close behind her. Each step echoed, a morbid countdown as the shadows reached out, claw-like fingers flicking across the edges of their vision. "What if it's a trap?" Ellie asked, but the words were nearly lost in the growing tension. Sarah didn't respond. Her focus was on the glow, on whatever secret threatened to unravel and whatever monstrosity they had awakened. As they reached the bottom, the glow expanded, revealing objects littered across a dirt floor, old pictures, broken toys, and rusty chains. And there, in the center, was something they never expected to see. A mirror, fractured and swirling, reflecting not their faces, but dread-filled voids that echoed their deepest fears. "Mommy, what is that?" Max's voice trembled, barely above a whisper. Before she could answer, the mirror rippled and twisted, and suddenly, a face emerged, one she recognized from the photograph. It grinned wickedly, eyes gleaming with otherworldly hunger. "Welcome," it taunted, its voice slithering through the air like smoke. "You've finally arrived." Sarah stumbled backward, the weight of their reality pressing down. They hadn't just come to find answers. They had awakened something that had been sleeping far too long. What had they unleashed in this forsaken place? The pull of the mirror beckoned them closer, and in that moment, Sarah knew they were no longer just seeking truth, they were staring into the abyss itself. The shadows shivered, the house trembled, and the only thought racing through her mind as the entity reached out was simple: was escape even possible? The mirror laughed, and the darkness thickened. What horrors awaited to be revealed? The reflection twisted, vibrating like the membrane of a drum, and Sarah felt the energy pulse around them. The face in the mirror, warped and sneering, seemed alive, each line etched in malice. It called to her with a voice that cascaded like ice, threading through her mind. "Join us," it hissed, echoing in the silent chamber, and the air thickened with a sickening heaviness. Sarah's eyes flew to Ellie and Max, their small faces pale, eyes wide with horror. "Mommy!" Max squeaked, fingers digging into Ellie's arm. The urgency in his voice snapped Sarah back to the present, pulling her from the abyss of fear. "Don't let it take us." Heart pounding furiously, Sarah blinked hard and stepped forward, instinctively blocking the children from the horrific gaze of the mirror. "Stay behind me," she ordered, trying to mask the tremor in her voice. No one responded. The shadows flicked around them, and for a split second, it felt like they were being watched by 100 unseen eyes. The oppressive silence lingered like vapor, wrapping tighter around them. "What do we do?" Ellie whispered, eyes darting toward the mirror, then back to her mother. "First, we need to get out of here," Sarah exclaimed, her mind racing. She glanced around the cold, damp space, finding nothing but relics of a forgotten past. Old toys, broken watches, and the near-complete sense of despair. But the mirror grinned back at her, a mocking reminder of their situation. "You think fleeing will save you?" it crooned, its voice oily and smooth. "The truth lies within this reflection. The darkness is already inside." "Shut up," Sarah shouted, surprising herself with the outburst. Anger surged, a protective instinct overriding her terror. But something deep inside her felt the truth behind its words, echoing pains and secrets long buried. As she turned, the shadows fluttered and convulsed, the darkness thickening like fog wrapping around her limbs. "Run!" But something or someone pulled at her feet, an invisible force holding her fast as Ellie screamed, "Mommy, we need to go. Please." Like a bolt, Sarah's heartbeat thundered louder, drowning out the entity's siren call. With a superhuman push, she tore herself away from the grip of the shadow, grabbing Max's hand, pulling Ellie close. Up the stairs. Now, the urgency propelled them into action, sprinting towards the only path back to safety. The dark tendrils snaked after them as if they had a will of their own, snapping dangerously at their heels. They burst through the trapdoor, stumbling into the cabin's main room. The chains hanging from the ceiling seemed to rattle with glee, mocking their escape. The photograph on the wall had changed. The faces were now twisted in angry hunger, their mouths widened in silent screams. "Mommy, it's not letting us go," Max cried, fear dripping from his voice like cold sweat. But Sarah pushed forward, desperate to reach the cabin door. The walls seemed to close in, shadows crawling, blocking their exit. Panic surged with each step. The dark force seemed alive, and it pulsed like a heartbeat, thrumming louder, hungry to reclaim them. Just outside the door, she caught a glimpse of the rope swing hanging from the ancient oak tree, seemingly innocent but tainted by whatever curse resided here. "Let us go," she shouted, flinging the door open. But the outside world felt wrong, shadows casting long, unnatural shapes across the ground. It was as if the very land beneath her feet breathed dread. The moment they stepped outside, a chilling laugh echoed behind them, resounding through the trees. "You think you can escape? We are forever intertwined." Sarah turned back, heart sinking at the sight of the mirror now open in the doorway, revealing not just the reflection but a world of shadows pouring into theirs, waiting for their every move. "Run!" she yelled, pulling her children along. They dashed into the woods, the laughter following, the branches clawing at them like desperate hands. What if the darkness chased them? What if it led them back to that cursed mirror? As the branches whipped against them, she couldn't shake the haunting question. What had they truly awakened? They ran blindly into the dark, hearts pounding, terror dragging behind them like a weight. But the woods whispered secrets, and not every path led to safety. What awaited them in the heart of the forest? The woods swallowed them whole, each step a descent into oblivion. Sarah felt the oppressive weight of the forest pressing against her, branches intertwining like skeletal fingers that wanted to pull them back. Every rustle, every sigh of the wind through the leaves whispered sinister promises, drawing them deeper into the dark. "Keep moving," she urged, her breath coming in frantic gasps. Max stumbled slightly, and she tightened her grip on his hand, refusing to let go, fear surging as if the shadows were playfully tempting her to abandon him. They plunged through the dense trees, breaking free into a small clearing, moonlight spilling like silver over a patch of soft grass. It offered a momentary reprieve, but even here, the air felt charged with unease. The trees loomed like silent sentinels, their twisted trunks depicting grotesque shapes that seemed to shift and pulse. "What if the mirror's still chasing us?" Ellie asked, her voice trembling. The realization hit Sarah like a punch. What if they weren't running from the mirror but into the heart of it? What if it didn't just exist in the cabin? "Let us just catch our breath," Sarah attempted to reassure them. "We need a plan." But deep inside, dread gnawed at her. They should have never been here, running away from something they didn't understand. A chill danced along her spine, twisting her gut. Before she could gather her thoughts, a flicker in the shadows caught her eye. A figure tall and dark emerged between the trees, its outline shifting like smoke. Sarah's breath caught. It wasn't just in her mind. The figure wore an old-fashioned coat, its face hidden, giving off the impression of a specter from an age-long past. "Look," Max pointed, eyes wide. "Mommy, who is that?" Sarah trembled but kept her ground, her protective instincts flaring. "Stay close," she hissed, taking a cautious step forward as the figure swayed, its form rippling. "What do you want?" Sarah shouted, her voice laced with both anger and fear. She felt her children shrink behind her, the warmth of their presence a crutch against the cold horror gathering. The figure paused, a low laugh escaping its lips, resonating through the clearing like a broken chime. "You feel the pull, don't you?" it asked, voice dripping with mockery. "You think you can outrun what you've awakened? The darkness is within you, waiting, yearning. It desires to be free." The trees danced, shadows swaying in rhythm to the heartbeat of that terrible laugh. Panic swelled. "Run!" she shouted suddenly, yanking her children towards the opposite side of the clearing. They bolted again, stumbling over roots and the uneven ground, relentless darkness pursuing in a frenzy as they darted through the underbrush. The laughter echoed behind them, chilling and relentless. "You cannot escape fate," it boomed. The trees shrieked, branches snapping like ribs under an unseen weight. Sarah's heart raced, thoughts spiraling. Why was it pursuing them? Or was it offering something else? Something darker? Ahead, a narrow path diverged, leading into deeper darkness, the shadows twisting in a disorienting dance. "This way," she yelled, plunging into the chaos of foliage as a heavy fog rolled in, thickening around them, suffocating. The laughter grew distant, but the tension clawed at her resolve. Max's grip tightened on her hand. "Mommy, please, I'm scared." "What's happening?" His voice cracked, piercing through the dense air. "I don't know," she screamed back. Each syllable felt heavy with despair. They couldn't stop. They couldn't look back. But something in Sarah whispered that the worst was yet to come. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light pierced the fog, illuminating a grotesque scene ahead. Shadows writhed into stark forms, revealing what lay before them: a massive tree, gnarled and twisted, its trunk split wide open. An eerie glow pulsed from the gash, and a chilling wind howled around it, beckoning like a siren. "What is that?" Ellie gasped, fear etched on her face. The atmosphere shifted as if the forest held its breath, waiting for their next move. This tree, whatever it was, it felt alive. "Should we go towards it?" Max's voice quavered. "No," Sarah shouted, but the warmth of hesitation filled her. In their flight from darkness, were they running into another trap? "No more guessing," Sarah whispered fiercely. They had to figure out if it was a path to salvation or a gate to despair. The darkness pressed in, hungry and waiting. "Just stay close, no matter what," But as they approached the tree's open maw, Sarah's heart sank. The glow radiating from within seemed inviting, but she knew better. What if it's all a trick? She murmured, pursuing her own thoughts. The air crackled with anticipation, merging dread with curiosity. The echo of laughter faded slowly, yet its implications lingered like fog. What awaited them at the threshold? Would this tree reveal the truth, or simply become another shadowy entrapment? And what say would they have in their fate now? They stood at the brink, trapped between their fears and the unknown. Hope flickered dimly as they prepared to cross that line. What awaited them beyond that eerie glow? Sarah hesitated at the edge of the glowing tree, the pulsating light pulling at her like a tide. The forest felt alive, vibrating with anticipation, dread coiling tightly in her gut. She could feel Max and Ellie close behind her, their breaths hitching in sync with her own, a shared anxiety hanging in the air, thick as fog. What if it's not what it seems? Max's voice trembled, the innocence of it stabbing deep into her heart. What if we're making a mistake? His question hung in the air, swinging between desperation and hope. The glow beckoned them, a stark contrast to the darkness enclosing them. But the specter's laughter echoed in her mind, a reminder of the malice that lurked in unseen corners. "We can't stay here," she urged, grasping Max's small hand tighter. "Whatever that thing is, it could be our only chance." As they drew nearer, the tree's gash widened, revealing an inner brilliance that swirled like a storm, vibrant and dark all at once. Sarah felt a magnetic pull, her feet moving almost of their own accord. The air thickened, swirling with whispers that hummed against her skin, promising secrets and power. "Mommy?" Ellie's voice broke through the haze, small and tremulous. The girl had grasped her brother's hand, eyes wide with fear, searching her mother's face for guidance. "It'll be okay," Sarah lied, swallowing hard against the fear rising in her chest. "We'll stick together." With her heart pounding in her ears, Sarah stepped forward, ignoring the distinct feeling of being watched. The moment her foot touched the glowing ground beneath the tree, the laughter returned, now joined by wails and screams, filling the air like a twisted choir. The luminous light swallowed them, wrapping around them with an unsettling warmth, and the forest darkened, plunging into deeper blackness. It was like stepping into another world, where time felt suspended, reality jagged and warped. "Hold my hand," she urged, squeezing Max's fingers. Ellie mirrored her actions, the three forming a shield of warmth against the looming chill. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed from the depths of the gash, shaking the very ground they stood on. The light flickered, and Sarah felt dread wash over her, hot and icy at the same time. She stepped back instinctively, eyes darting around as the shadows twisted, restless. "What's happening?" Max squeaked, his voice small as they all took another cautious step back. "I don't know," she shouted over the din, but the truth clawed at her. Something was awakening. She could feel the forest shuddering, branches creaking, life and death tangled in a grim embrace. "Mommy!" Ellie cried, her eyes filling with terror. "Make it stop." In that moment, something shifted within the light, shapes forming. Faces twisted in rapture and agony emerged, swirling with the glow, pleading and mocking in equal measure. Hands reached out from the light, as if to drag them in, to pull them toward their own demise. "Get away!" Sarah screamed, yanking her children back. But it was too late. The force of the pull intensified. The glow erupted, and a blinding flash enveloped them. Fears came alive, twisting realities. Sarah grappled with the dreadful urge to step forward, to give in to the allure of abandoning her responsibilities, of surrendering to darkness that promised release. "No!" she shouted, shaking her head violently, clinging to her children. As the light twisted around them, the cacophony drowned out reality. She felt the roots of the forest wrapping around her, anchoring her. Memories flooded her mind, laughter shared, moments of safety, and the warmth of home. In the haze of chaos, a single thought crystallized. They needed to break the connection. Before she could act, the brightness dimmed, and a voice, smooth and haunting, curled around her senses. You want to leave? You must choose. Then an image swept through her mind, a plea for sacrifice. A dark bargain whispered through time. It held an allure, a promise she could barely comprehend. Choices. The voice echoed, pulling on her mind, almost seductive. One must pay to escape. Sarah's pulse raced. What choice? What cost? With the forest shifting and ashes swirling at their feet, she whispered to Max and Ellie, "Whatever happens, stay by me." And yet, the voice lingered, teasing, mocking. What if escape wasn't what it seemed? What if the price was far greater than they ever expected? They exchanged glances, their fates intertwined, trembling at the brink of darkness. As the world around them warped, blending nightmares into reality, Sarah finally shouted into the chaos, "We choose to stay together." But would their bond be enough to shatter the very essence of what haunted the woods? Or would fate drag them deeper into despair? The swirling glow darkened, and everything went silent. What choice lay ahead, hidden in the shadows? The silence that engulfed them felt heavier than the darkness itself. Sarah's heartbeat pounded in her ears, a relentless drum urging her to break free. But the glow had receded into a dim ember, the haunting wails now faded whispers, leaving only a cold dread in their wake. She glanced around, seeking any sign of what had shifted, but the forest lay still, unnervingly quiet. "Mommy?" Ellie's voice cut through the suffocating stillness. It was an innocent sound, but it echoed like a struggle against the oppressive weight that pressed down on them. "Stay close," Sarah instructed, her voice barely above a whisper, laced with a terror that danced at the edge of her mind. She tightened her grip on Max's hand, feeling the cold sweat slickening his tiny palm. The ground felt different beneath her feet, as if it had shifted in their absence. Dark roots twisted out from the gnarled tree, creeping forward as if alive, writhing like serpents eager to ensnare trespassers. "We have to go back," Max murmured, his eyes darting toward the now faint shimmer of light they had just come from. "I feel it feels wrong here." Tension coiled in Sarah's stomach. A primal instinct kicked in. They had surrendered for a moment, and now they were unmoored in a world tainted by whispers of something sinister. "No, we can't go back. We didn't choose to step into that light, and whatever it is, we need to find a way out of here." Emerging from the shadows, a faint giggle drew their eyes. A small figure flickered in and out of focus amid the trees. As it approached, Sarah's heart plummeted. The child was pale, hollow-eyed, with a grin stretched too wide for any face. "Stay with me," it chanted, each word dripping like honey, sickly sweet yet laced with a rancid undertone. The figure danced, arms flailing, a marionette pulled by unseen strings, luring them with eerie familiarity. "Ellie!" Sarah pulled her daughter close, feeling the tremors ripple through her small frame. "Don't look at it." Max, however, stood frozen, captivated by the apparition. "It's just playing," he whispered, breaking Sarah's heart with his innocence. "No." She yanked him back, ripping him free from the spell. "It's not real. It wants to trick you." The eerie child lunged forward, its laughter reverberating off the trees. Choose, or you'll be alone." A sharp intake of breath escaped Sarah's lips. It stung like a knife, the implications of that phrase gnawing at her. No more choices. The thought pressed down hard. The dread that consumed her now felt very real. If they didn't act, they would be separated, consumed by this dark sanctuary. "Run!" she yelled, breaking the spell as the figure's face twisted into a mask of rage, shadows writhing around it like predators. They stumbled backwards, eyes wide, survival instincts kicking in. A cold breeze swept through the clearing, snatching at their clothes and chilling them to the bone. Thorns grasped at Sarah's ankles as they fled, the ground shifting with every step, trying to pull them down. The laughter of the wraith child echoed behind them, taunting, relentless, and Sarah felt the very air thickening with a malevolence she could almost touch. Suddenly, paths diverged before them, shadows stretching towards different directions. A crossroads carved from the very essence of the woods, each path edged in darkness, each seemingly alive with unspeakable horrors. "Which way?" Max cried, panic threading through his voice. Sarah's heart raced. Every instinct howled that no road was safe, but they couldn't afford hesitation. "We trust the light." She pointed toward a flickering warmth in the distance, a fragile beacon amid the gloom. But the pathway warped and twisted as they darted toward it, chaotic laughter growing louder, echoing in the expanse. The forest seemed to inhale, shadows creeping in, ready to suffocate the hope they clung to. "Stay together." The words felt both like a comfort and a curse. With the choice made and the darkness pressing in, Sarah felt a surge of icy dread wrap around her heart. If they were wrong, the lights flickered and faded, twisted voices, whispering secrets only the forest understood. They sprinted, breathless and terrified, souls linked against the yawning abyss. But what if trusting the light led them deeper into the darkness? As they crossed into the next shadow, Sarah had to wonder, was the true monster in the woods waiting just out of sight? And just then, the ground trembled, threatening to split beneath their feet, leading them down a path they never intended to take. Sarah's heart pounded as they raced towards the flickering light, the shadows snapping like hungry wolves tugging at their heels. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and dread. Every pulse of the forest echoed with sinister laughter, the kind that chilled the bones. "Faster," she urged, gripping her children's hands as they stumbled through the underbrush, each step a frantic appeal to the universe for safety. The path to the light narrowed, twisting like a serpent. It felt deceptive, as though the trees themselves were conspiring to trap them in a web of darkness. Abandoning every rational thought, Sarah plunged ahead, her instincts screaming at her to escape the clutches of whatever haunted this forsaken forest. "We're almost there," she yelled, desperation fueling her words. A glint caught her eye, the beam of light flickered like a dying star beckoning them closer. But doubt surged within her. Was it a sanctuary or another trap laid by the darkness? Time clawed at her legs, but she willed herself to keep moving, to push through the crushing fear. Suddenly, the air split with a sharp howl. Resonating through the woods, the creature was gaining ground. "Run!" Max cried, tears spilling down his cheeks. Guilt washed over Sarah, furious at herself for dragging them into this nightmare. "I'm sorry," she whispered, though no one could hear. All she could do was sprint forward, holding her children tight as they dodged branches and brambles. Just beyond the trees, beyond the darkness, lay the anomalous beam of light brightening the underbrush. Being pulled by its glow, they lunged toward the sanctuary. As they pushed through the final thicket, Sarah suddenly felt an anchor drop within her. They weren't alone. That an ancient oak towered over them, roots sprawling outward like grasping fingers, its gnarled bark illuminated in the dim light. Sitting at its base was a weathered woman draped in a cloak that shimmered like the remnants of twilight. Her eyes sparkled with grief and warmth, yet the shadows danced around her, shifting like they knew something they didn't. "What do you seek?" she asked, voice like wind through chimes. "Help," Sarah gasped, breathless. "We're being hunted by something terrible. It's chasing us." The old woman's gaze turned serious. "You carry the weight of choices unmade, family bound by blood and fear." The woods rumbled with ominous laughter, a mocking echo of their terror. The woman looked toward the dark path from which they had come and shook her head. "You must confront it. There is no escaping your fate." "But how?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "I can't listen," she urged, her eyes piercing through shadows. "This darkness thrives on fear. Only you can sever its hold." With every ounce of courage she could muster, Sarah stepped forward. "I won't let it take my family. I choose to face it." The woman nodded solemnly, brandishing a small, crystalline charm. "Use this. It holds the light within you. Shine it in the darkness. Remember, fear is not your enemy. It is merely a shadow waiting for your light." As Sarah's grip tightened around the charm, she felt an electric pulse surge through her. The shadows around them stilled, anticipating almost a heavy breath before the plunge. "Ready?" she asked, her voice steadier than before, glancing at Ellie and Max. They nodded despite the tremors coursing through them. Together they stepped back toward the forest, holding fast to each other as they entered the darkness. The weight of the forest pressed upon them. The mocked laughter faded momentarily, a ghostly echo, while fear flitted along their skin like static. "Listen to me," Sarah shouted, finding strength within the rising tide of adrenaline. "We stand together. I'm not scared," Max chimed in bravely, squeezing his sister's hand. With unyielding purpose, Sarah hoisted the charm high, illuminating the path ahead. Pure light surged forth like dawn breaking through a long-held night, forcing the shadows back as if they were frightened mice. The dark tendrils recoiled, snarling and hissing, but Sarah pressed on, filled with newfound resolve. Then a familiar shape emerged from the shadows. It was the silhouette that had haunted them, its form twisting grotesquely. "You cannot escape what you are," cried voice a chilling rasp. "No," she shouted back, defiance igniting her as she shone the charm at the creature. The light pierced through the gloom, cascading like sunshine breaking through storm clouds. The sinister laughter shrieked, melting away under the brilliance. "Fear me not," Sarah declared, her voice strong and unwavering. "I choose to protect my family." The shadows whirled, howling defiantly, but Sarah's light transformed fury into warmth, driving back the darkness. With a final pulse of luminescence, it shattered like glass, fracturing the weighty darkness and releasing a stream of soft light that danced back towards the heart of the forest. In that moment, the darkness erupted, screams mingling with laughter, as the shadowy figure dissolved back into the woods, defeated. The air cooled as the pressing weight lifted, leaving only the heavy, sweet smell of fresh earth around them. Exhausted, the trio collapsed in the clearing, dust and light still swirling in the air. The warmth felt like a long-lost embrace. "Did we win, Mommy?" Ellie whispered, eyes wide with hope. Sarah pulled them into her arms, tears brimming with relief. "Yes, sweetheart, we did." As they hugged tightly, the old woman appeared one last time from the branches, nodding with approval. "The forest has been healed by your bond. Remember, darkness and light are part of every story, never forget that." With her words echoing in their minds, Sarah felt the final remnants of fear fade away. Finally, they were free. They walked together into the brightness of dawn that broke beyond the trees, weaving through the branches toward their new beginning, bravely united against whatever awaited them next, a life reclaimed. But as they stepped out, the fleeting shadows still lingered, whispering promises of paths yet to take, like a constant reminder that every ending is merely a new beginning. So, if you enjoyed this heart-pounding tale, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, making sure you stay updated. Flood the comments section below with your reactions and theories about this haunting conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this chilling finale. Only true fans know how crucial your support is. So take action now.